Hello and welcome to BlackBerry Atheist. Today we continue a long series of watching Matt Powell rant about how creationism have evidence backing their claims and evolution is apparently just a fairy tale. This is part 7 and we're just gonna try to finish it today. Let's see where we get. Let's get into the video.
Creation science, we believe that the world is 6,000 years old. But in evolution, they believe that the world is 13.7 billion years old. And there are many indicators in nature that show us that the Earth is not billions of years old. And one of those things
I don't believe that's a claim really in evolution. That's more of geology, which studies how old Earth is. It studies the rock on the planet, which tells us really how old the planet is. And they date it back to billions of years old. I believe astrology deals with the actual universe. I believe physics or physicists also deal with the age of the universe so they could be able to calculate things more accurately. Not necessarily evolution. Though evolution used these diagrams because it makes sense and it fits into the amount of time it did took to change from species to species, the amount of time it took for humans to branch out from all of us having a common ancestor, it does make it matches the diagram of evolution, the timeline drew out, but it's not really a claim from evolution. And we've seen this again and again in his video saying like evolution does not believe in the global flood. Like it's not part of evolution. You're just trying to mix so much things together that are not even part of the evolutionary claim.
is diamonds. Diamonds are made up of the most compact atomic particles in the world. And even with all of our best technology, we have a hard time being able to break through them. Well, diamonds contain C14. Now remember, C14 only lasts for 50,000 years. And so if C14 is in diamonds and C14 is constantly exiting diamonds, why is it still in there? If you Google how
He just said 50,000 years, up to 50,000 years. That is still way more than 6,000 years. I don't know if you understand that that's the number that is given, but even the number that is given, this is not the first time it mentioned C14 in dinosaur bones. That is still more than 6,000 years, which makes your stand, if you're even right, which you're not, wrong. I mean, think about it. He's trying to say that Earth is 6,000 years old, but he's going on a rant about how C14 is found in dinosaurs and in diamonds, and they'll max out 50,000 years old. But whoa, that proves a 6,000 year Earth. Like, you're missing 44,000 years.
old are diamonds, it will tell you that they're between 1 and 3.5 billion years old. One of the other things that we find consistently is helium inside of rock crystals. Now these helium bubbles are actually slipping out of the rocks over time. They're very unstable. And so why is it that certain rock crystals are loaded with helium? And you can even go to different places and see the bubbles in these rocks. If these rocks are millions of years old, there wouldn't be any helium left inside of them. And so that means that they also were created recently. But if you Google
And these things were created by a divine being. If you were claiming that, then you have to prove it. You can't just fall back to, oh yeah, they were created by God. And just because you don't understand something, which you could actually consult, you know, actual expert, doesn't mean, oh, they were created recently. It's like he's learning something. It's like, I don't even know how this guy does it. It's like he goes into and read like the first page of a book that talks about evolution, and then he goes, aha, you couldn't find any question for that, and did not read the entire book. Reads the first textbook of geology, the first two page, And be like, oh, diamond, 3 billion years old. You can't answer that. C14. It's so stupid. If you have actual questions, you could ask expert, and they will give you an explanation for why you could find helium in crystals.
How old are crystals? They say that it's supposedly the oldest scrap of Earth's crust. And even if we look in outer space, we can see evidence of a recent creation as well, because short period comets, for example, only last 10,000 years. They're actually burning up. If you look at the tail of a comet, what that actually is material that's getting blown off of the comet. It's literally breaking down and disintegrating over time. And the question then becomes, could these comets be millions of years old? The answer is no.
If the people that study this say it is, and the answer is yes, they're not just making this claim without actually having evidence to back it. And just because you don't understand it doesn't mean it's not true. This is different from the Christian standpoint. I mean, I post a video on the Trinity, and people were like, "Oh, just because you don't understand it doesn't mean it's not true." The problem is not that I don't understand what the Trinity is claiming. The problem is it doesn't make any actual sense. Here we're dealing with someone who actually does not understand the concept to begin with, and then just backing out and say, "Well, he has to be God because it's so complex. It's so amazing. He has to be recently created when there's no evidence pointing to that."
When a comet goes through its orbit, many times it will orbit the sun, and when it gets close to the sun, it burns up 3 to 5%. It can only lose so much before it's lost it all, right? And since evolutionists believe that the universe has been around for billions of years, they have to explain why comets still exist. And so what they will
No, evolutionists do not have to do that. It's not really evolutionist's job. Biology does not study astrology and study comets. They don't study Earth itself either. They study biology. They study life. So no, they do not have to answer anything of sort. It's like someone saying someone who believes volcano actually can erupt needs to prove that the Earth is round. Like uh, it does not really connect, and it's not the same thing. Even though they're both technical geology, it's really not the same thing. Like they don't. It's not the same thing. So no, evolutionists don't need to prove that, or show why comets are still around. Which the astronaut, I don't think they were just created by God to just roll around, because that would not make any sense. It's how these people pick and choose which scientific discoveries they want to, you know, think are true. I mean, people who study outer space and study astrology, they understand, astrophysicists, they understand like the Earth is about 4 point something billion years old, and the entire universe is about 13 point something billion years old. These are things that they need to know so they could actually, I don't know, do their calculations accurately. But these are the same people that study things like gravity, gravitational pull, and how that helps with the equation of the universe, guide the laws of the universe. But these people obviously will believe in gravity because there's evidence backing it. These are the same people that actually discover it, give evidence for it. But once something is against their biblical belief, all of a sudden scientists are going on a rampage that is just not true. They all of a sudden going rogue in things that they can prove, even though they're given evidence for it. That's the entire thing with biology, apparently. They'll believe in micro because obviously you can see that in a lifetime, in a sense. You could see the evidence of that. But a macro is all of a sudden impossible, even though it would make sense that a macro would happen eventually with enough micro evolution. Let's keep going.
will say is that there is this thing called the Oort Cloud that's constantly creating new comets and spiraling them into orbit. But if you were to Google, is there any evidence that the Oort Cloud exists? The answer is that there is no definitive evidence that the Oort Cloud exists. It says for decades, scientists have theorized that beyond the edge of the solar system, there lies a massive cloud of icy planetesimals known as the Oort Cloud. This cloud is believed to be where comets originate from. However, no evidence has been provided to confirm the Oort Cloud's existence. The Oort Cloud is completely made up. It's a rescue device that tries to answer.
Completely made up. It's one of the ideas. I just searched it up. Comet or icy objects that originate from outer reach of the solar system. A Google search will really get you this. The hot cloud from either the hot cloud or the Kuiper belt. So these are things that are not necessarily in our solar system and they come into our solar system probably through gravitational pull. Also, I don't think the whole cloud is like a physical thing. It's more referring to like the gravitational pull of, I guess, like icy rocks. I am not sure. Don't know much about astrophysics, astrology, but it's definitely not how he sees it. There's no conclusive evidence that it exists, but we could see that over time that this Oort cloud could have developed. Does this really matter to evolution? They're not in the same category. It's not related. It's just not.
The obvious fact that comets exist in our solar system and in the world, and they don't know how to deal with it. So the only thing they can do is make up or make believe a rescue device. They say, well, there must be some cloud out there, this Oort cloud with icy planetesimals that spirals new comets into orbit. That is a complete denial of what we can see. Science is based on what we know and what we can.
Just because we can't see it doesn't mean it's not there or it doesn't exist. If there's evidence pointing toward the fact that it does, then it does. We can't see what evolution has already done. We can see some of it through fossils, but we can't necessarily see the process entirely with our physical eyes. And that doesn't mean it didn't happen. These are the same people that will want you to believe that just because they can't see God doesn't mean it doesn't exist, and then present no evidence to back that. But science is saying just because you can't see the process physically doesn't mean you don't actually look at the evidence and say it points towards evolution, which it does.
See. We can't see the Oort cloud because it probably doesn't exist. It's just something that they made up. And even the planets show that the universe was created recently because Saturn's rings are dispersing over time. Before long, those rings will have deteriorated, they will have dispersed into non-existence. Pluto is warm on the inside. Could that be the case for millions of years? Could you put a cup of coffee, right, and have steam coming off of it for millions and millions of years, and it remain at a certain temperature for deep time? I mean, that's ridiculous.
Planet Earth is warm at its core, like it's really hot at its core. Most of these planets, at the core, they have a core because it's solid. Some of them, at the core, it's still like not freezing. So that may explain in just that. Like they need a core. The core is usually just hot, actually.
There is no way that this could have been the case. Obviously, these planets were created recently. And one thing that I've always seen evolution.
Obviously, give evidence of what you're saying. Obviously, I mean you're going around saying, "Well, scientists got it wrong and I got it right." They're making apparently guesses about the hot cloud. They're making guesses about planets. Like, no, I don't think Pluto is a planet anymore. They're making guesses about Pluto. They're making guesses about the entire galaxy, the entire universe. They don't actually have a conclusive evidence of anything, any of this. So obviously, it has to be created recently. Show evidence of that. Just saying everyone got it wrong is not evidence of what you're claiming. You're making a claim and you're not backing it with evidence. God did it, prove it.
Creationists use to try to say that the universe is billions of years old is radiometric dating. Now, a couple things to note. Radiometric dating has never been correct for rocks of known age. They've always come back with incorrect dates, and they use circular reasoning. Check this out in World Book Encyclopedia. It says the age of the rocks may be determined by the fossils found in them. Then it says scientists determine when fossils were formed by finding out the age of the rocks in which they lie. So they're dating the fossils by the rocks by the fossils. That's their dating method. It's circular reasoning, right? But in 1980, Mount St. Helens erupted.
So the way they did these trucks are quite interesting. They use there's relative type of ways they do it, like relative dating. It doesn't necessarily show them the precise amount, but it shows an estimate of when this rock was made and how it launched it has been. There's many different ways they do that. There's the absolute dating method that they use, which has the radioactive thing that he's talking about, which they use the radiometrics dating to try to date it back, which they study different elements like potassium or carbon to date back to when exactly this rock was formed. This is more accurate than the relative dating, but this is how they find how old a rock is. I'm not really sure where he's getting most of his information from, but just because, again, he doesn't understand it doesn't mean it actually doesn't happen. I mean, it's just beyond me how he's able to like not look at what he's reading and not do a deeper reading, just coming to a conclusion and saying, well, he has to be 6,000 years old. This rocks date back millions of years, not just 6,000. They were not recently made.
And it created lava that flowed down the side of the mountain, and that lava solidified into what's known as igneous rock. Well, some creation scientists took different samples of this rock that had solidified 10 years after it solidified, and they sent it to 5 different labs known as the Geochron laboratories. The Geochron laboratories checked out these rocks and did their radiometric dating tests, and the dates that they came back with completely debunked radiometric dating. The first sample came back as 340,000 years old. The second sample came back as 350,000 years old. The third sample came back as 900,000 years old. The fourth sample came back as 7 million years old.
If this is true and they actually did not like rigged everything, because I don't trust these people at all, it does make some aspect of sense. You could actually melt rocks under the right amount of temperature. They also minerals. They also matter. I mean, you could literally do that. That's how we got lava. It's just literally a melted rock. And a lava erupt from the core of like the, I'm not sure if it's all the way down to the core, but it's deep down into the planet. The volcano is an opening to deep down in the core of the planet. So we're taking the rocks from the bottom and erupting it up. The recent could be up there, the holders could be up there. Depending on which sample they sent, you could get different ages of rock. The rock just didn't just form 10 years ago. It's been there. It just came out from a lava. I don't think they understand how this dating goes. You have the most recent layers at the top, and you have the oldest at the bottom. This is how we find fossils too, unless some eroding factors erode them from underground to up, which the volcano literally did. So, God, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. If you actually find the same substance and you did it yourself back to, I don't know, 5,000 years old, and you separate that substance and you send it out, that's much of a better experiment than to take literally go and take a piece of rock from a lava. It just erupt from like a lava, like you just erupt from a flicking volcano, and you send it to separate scientists. You're gonna get different results because you most likely sent different rocks. And knowing what these people know, which is literally nothing about our planet, they most likely sent different rocks, different ages of rocks to different places. That's if we even trusting that they did any of this to begin with.
And the fifth sample came back as 2.8 million years old. So all of these igneous rocks from the same event when Mount St. Helens erupted that were only about 10 years old were tested, and they all came back with vastly different ages, according to radiometric dating processes. This means that radiometric dating is false. And by the way,
No, it just means either you actually can do an experiment to save your life, or you don't know what you're saying. It means really a lot of things. But mostly it falls down to you. Radiometrics is the most precise, I believe, way that we found to date back rocks, and they're quite precise. If you actually send those rocks and it dates back to those days, that means it actually date back to those days. The rocks didn't just form 10 years. No, they've been under the planet, just in a very liquid state, and when they came up, they turned to solid. But they were technically still rocks at some stage. They just melted. Liquid rocks. I guess you could call them that.
you can create radiometric isotopes in a lab, and the next day they date as millions of years old.
That's not what you did. I don't know where he's getting apparently that from, but that's not exactly what you did.
Brand new isotopes that date as millions of years old. But we're supposed to believe that just because we find some radiometric isotopes in some rocks, therefore we can use that to date how old these rocks are? It's
You're not supposed to just believe there's evidence backing that they're actually accurate.
ridiculous. Get this, no rock of known age has ever been dated accurately. They've taken rocks that we know the age
And how did you know that? How would you know the actual age? How did you come to a conclusion that this rock age, came to 6,000 years ago? Again, he's not just trying to say, well, scientists are wrong, scientists are wrong. He's saying creationism is right, which is a claim. If you're saying scientists are wrong, I don't like this, I don't like that, okay, go ahead, keep your opinion. But he's saying creationism is actually accurate. And yet, no actual evidence. He's just saying scientists are wrong, does creationism. That doesn't follow. It doesn't follow.
of igneous rocks, for example, and they've sent them in to be radiometrically dated, and the radiometric dates never come back correctly. They're always incorrect. And so to trust radiometric dating to be the fundamental source of how we can date the age of the crust of the Earth, that is so ludicrous. That is so ridiculous that people would actually think that radiometric dating has even a possibility of having any accuracy. And as we come to a close here, I want to talk about the most important part of this presentation. We believe as
We're finally at the closing statement. We've been all waiting for this patiently because this has been a long run, people. A long run.
Christians that Jesus is the truth. But Darwinists believe that Darwin had the truth. We can compare
Darwinist, evolutionist. That's so stupid. Again, Darwin didn't care about whether you believe in Jesus or not. This evolution does not really care whether you believe in Jesus or not. Christians have always found a way to shove their God somewhere. And right now they're shoving it in abiogenesis where we don't know much. and there still things to be discovered. They always find a way to shove the God wherever they want it because they made it up, because they actually have control over their God. Oh wow, what a surprise. They have a control of what their God actually is. That's why you can go to different churches and get a different perspective, different teaching of what God's characters or what God actually is. That's because you guys control what it is. Not even your biblical text can stop you from doing that. So if the biblical text said 6,000 year hertz, you can go ahead and say, well, your 6,000 could be 6 billion. I mean, in God's time could be different from ours. You see how easy it is to just disregard it. Most Christians have already done this. We have a lot of Christians that believe in evolution and are still Christians. They see the evidence supporting it and just believe God did it. I guess that's okay. It's better than just denying reality fully. Still denying some reality, but it's better than just denying everything. Be in denial about things that are factual. Let's try to finish this.
Compare this as well. We can compare the life of Jesus to Darwin, and we can see who spoke.
I'm fucking sorry. How the fuck? What? Oh my god. No one is saying Darwin is Jesus. No one is saying Darwin is all of a sudden a righteous man that we should all follow. No one is saying Darwin is the son of a super being. It's not really a comparison. Oh my god. But okay, let's hear him out.
Spoke with accuracy and with truth. First off, Darwin admitted this.
Also, that's nearly impossible. Like, I believe we actually have more things of what Darwin said, actual direct source from Darwin. You see, he says Darwin said this, and we know for quite certainty that Darwin actually said this. Except Jesus' words, we don't even know which one is and which one is not. So we can't really necessarily say Jesus definitely said this. There's some words that he actually said in the Bible. We don't know exactly whether some are just embedded, made up. People think he would have said it and just put it there. Again, the gospel writers were trying to pursue a narrative, and you will make the text whatever you want to make it. We do this in school, we do this everywhere in our daily life. We look at the evidence, and if we're trying to control the narrative, we'll try to shape it the way we want it to shape it. We'll take few words, we'll say, well, this is what they're trying to mean. This is what the gospel writers are saying. This is what they were trying to do. We know Darwin's word to be Darwin's word, but we don't actually have a direct source of, I guess, what Jesus actually said.
He says, often a cold shudder has run through me, and I have asked myself whether I may have devoted myself to a fantasy. Charles Darwin was afraid that he was living in a fantasy. He was afraid that his world may not even be based in.
He said, I have devoted myself to fantasy. And if it's referring to evolution, this is one of the few things that people actually have not like studied that much. I believe his grandfather studied it, but it's not like a very known field. And what he's talking about is natural selection, which in his book he actually points towards the evidence of everything, making it not fantasy. But I'm not sure where you're getting the quote from, so you do you.
In reality. Well, he was right about that. At least he was right about something. But Jesus never said that. He said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me.
So this bozo prefer a person that's being honest and being skeptical of their own idea until they find reasonable conclusion, reasonable evidence to conclude, well, I was actually right. And you could disprove me by finding this, that, and this, which he stated in his book. Versus Jesus saying, I'm the way, the truth, the life. Arrogant bozo who apparently can never be wrong and is the only person you need to believe in to get to the Father. You can't do anything else. Nothing else can be done but through him. So you prefer someone that's just narcissistic and like don't like think is all that versus someone who's being humble and honest and trying to find evidence to back their claims. Or someone who's just making a claim to be the son of God.
Jesus spoke in absolutes. Darwin said that he was afraid that he was living in fantasy land.
I believe Darwin wins round one, being skeptical of what he is saying until he actually find conclusive evidence to support what he's saying, versus saying you're right when you have no evidence to back any of that.
Darwin said at some future period, not very distant as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace the savage races throughout the world. Darwin was a racist. He didn't like people of darker shades of skin. He would use racial slurs against them. But Jesus was not a racist. Jesus created.
And if Darwin was a racist, does that really, I don't know, affect the theory of evolution? It doesn't, people. It really doesn't. It just shows that Darwin was part of his time with a bunch of racist white people. That's all it shows. And Jesus being racist too shows that he was part of his own time. I mean, my God.
Created every single person. But if you're out in public long enough, you're going to see these bumper stickers. People will say, my Darwin shark ate your Jesus fish. And they'll have a Darwin fish eating the Jesus fish. What they're trying to do is they're trying to say that Darwin was smart and Jesus was not. But I have news for them. Darwin said this: a married man is a poor slave, worse than a Negro. But in the Bible, the book that God authored, it says this.
That's actually funny. By the way, we still have statements like that today, just not necessarily in the way he formed it, but people still have the idea that men being married is like giving away their freedom. You can see that, just go on Instagram and literally scroll for a while, and you will see something like that. So, oh wow, he's making a joke. He's dumb. Apparently.
There is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither bond nor free. There is neither male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. Every single
Wait, hold on. Jesus said that, or someone said that? Why would he say you are all one in Christ Jesus?
person is precious in the sight of the Lord, whether they're black, white, yellow, red. In Darwin's journal, he admitted this. He said, I am very stupid, and I hate everybody and everything. That's pretty incriminating to say that you hate.
I do not really honestly know where he's getting all this from. Maybe from his book. But then again, I say this every time. I am stupid. Because to say that you're some genius when you're really not, because you don't know everything, is just being arrogant and being self centered and really need to like open your eyes. But let's see what Jesus would say.
Everybody and that you hate everything. And people will say, well, maybe he was just undergoing some stress and so he just said that he hates everything. And I've seen people do that. That's fair. But it takes it to a whole nother level when you realize that Darwin wrote this in his journal. He actually wrote down how
If I have a journal, which I try to get every single like a year and try to, start writing a journal, but then I'm like, if someone actually reads it, I'm probably gonna go to jail or go to a hospital. I definitely would write in there that I hate everybody and I don't like certain things. It's a journal. Do we even have a Jesus journal? I don't think we do. So we don't even have a personal statement from Jesus to say this are his own words. But it doesn't matter, really. Because Darwin was a man, and we all understand that Darwin was a man that would make mistakes, a man that would do something a man would do. Jesus is supposed to be God, who created our objective morality. Remember your dumb claims, Christians? Thus, we cannot expect him to be making dumb mistakes, like saying, I am stupid. How the fuck can you be stupid when you're supposedly all knowing? But Darwin is a man, meaning he can say that, because it would make sense, even in your own word dumb view.
How much he hated the world and how much he hated everyone and everything. That's pretty incriminating that he was filled with hate. But Jesus was filled with love. In fact,
Oh, by the way, none of us are getting any context, and I'm not searching this up. It's just a waste. The context is probably something actually deserving of saying that. It won't just say that out of nowhere. No one would just say that out of nowhere unless there's actual context.
he told the truth, and people hated him for that, and they hated him so much that they nailed him to the cross. And Jesus died a martyr's death because of people who hated him because of the love
No, because he was rebelling against the government. And once that happened, they will nail your ass to the cross. Like, that's what they did. Back then, they will nail you to the cross. It's expected. He knew what he was going for.
that he had for others. I'd like to end this presentation with this verse. The Bible says, "Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good." The only way to make a difference in somebody's life is to choose yourself to not compromise. Never compromise. People will say you have to compromise to be able to get people to listen to your message. There's never been a bigger lie that's been spoken that I've heard than that.
Bro, you're on the internet making videos about Jesus. That's compromise. That is compromise. Nobody was doing this 2,000 years ago when Jesus was even alive. It was just preaching to mass of people in person. This is a compromise. Using technology to promote your message is a compromise. And also comparing Jesus and Darwin does not make sense. It's like comparing literally based on your ideas of the Trinity, comparing a man to a God. It's not the same standard. We're not gonna judge both of them at the same standard. Because it doesn't make any fucking sense. It doesn't. God's standard, which is supposed to be a moral standard, should be way higher. But based on even what you presented, it seems like Darwin and Jesus had quite a few things in common. If Darwin was a racist, then Jesus also is a racist. Because we could see that example in the Bible, how he told this woman that why would you give a food deserving of a human to a dog? Like, he was a racist. Apparently, he didn't hate the world. They ate him so much they nailed him to a cross while he was rebelling against the government. What did he expect? To be saved by the divine God? I prefer someone that was actually real versus someone that would actually never existed. And I'm talking the spiritual Jesus that rose from the dead. There was actually probably an historical Jesus. There's evidence pointing toward that. But a spiritual Jesus that rose from the dead, that's also God, is fantasy. Well, that's all the series. That's where we're gonna stop. That's everything encompass of a Christian response to evolution. Matt Powell on a rant. It's been a long run and it's been quite interesting and honestly, very, very tiring. Well, thank you all for sticking by. If you like the video, please like and subscribe, and have a good day, people.